great. This couldn't be worse. No. Here we go. Yeah, hey Mom. Look, listen, I need some help. No, Mom, look, I appreciate you telling all your friends to subscribe to the channel. We're really close to 100,000, but that's not what I called you about. No, see, my car just broke down and I'm supposed to be in Miami by tonight. No, I didn't know we had a new sponsor this week. Toco Warranty is the sponsor? So, how's that gonna help me fix my car? You're saying purchasing a Toco vehicle service contract is the simple and affordable way to make sure I'm protected when a breakdown happens? And you're saying that fans of this show can get 50% off their first payment just by using the code GROOVY? Wow, Toco must really love the Groovy Gang. Wow, Mom, we should really catch up more often. Good to know that Toco Warranty has me covered. So what should I do while I'm waiting for my car to get fixed? I wish I could go film an Out of the Groove episode or something. What the heck? Hold, what? Oh my, wow. Toco really does have everything covered. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. This is it, folks. This is the weekend we have been waiting for. I should already be on my way to Homestead Miami Speedway for Champions Weekend, but I guess before I'm able to do that, let's talk about each race this year, the final four for trucks, the final four for Xfinity, and of course the four for the Cup Series side of things. I'm going to give you guys my championship prediction across each of the three series. We're going to look at some stats. We're going to talk about maybe what we should watch out for, who the underdogs are, who the favorites are. We're going to talk about all that stuff. This is the Homestead Miami NASCAR Championship Weekend preview episode. Let's do this, boys and girls. Reminder, this is the last championship weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway for the foreseeable future. Next year, we're going to be at Phoenix for the championship race in November. But yeah, let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with the Truck Series stuff because Truck Series, the championship for that race for that is literally right around the corner. Friday night here, Truck Series action. 4 finalists, Ross Chastain, Matt Crafton, Stuart Friesen, and Brett Moffitt. Let's just talk through this one really quick. I actually think this might be the most entertaining race of the 3 this weekend. The Truck Series guys always put on a great show, and when a lot's on the line, these Truck Series guys, they just race like their lives depend on it, basically. And Ross Chastain being in that championship 4, he's an aggressive race car driver. Matt Crafton, he's won championships before, but he's out to prove he still has what it takes. Obviously, Brett Moffitt trying to defend his championship run from last year. And then Stuart Friesen, the guy who, in my opinion, feels like he's just happy to be there, but he's got really nothing to lose. He's going to go for it all. This Truck Series race Friday night is going to be wild. So here are my predictions for this one. It's tough for me to decide who I want to root for in this race because I really like Ross Chastain. I love everything about him. He's taken a gamble on himself. He's created a brand for himself. He's run trucks, Xfinity, Cup Series all throughout this season. He's won in underperforming equipment. He's taken a Nice Motorsports team that nobody knew about before this year and has won races with them. He's doing the same thing with Colleague and Xfinity. I love everything about Ross Chastain, but he is a very aggressive driver and he's angered a lot of his competitors over the year. I feel like he's earned a reputation now for being kind of overly aggressive at times and sometimes maybe a little careless on the racetrack. See Talladega a few weeks ago for an example. So I really like Ross Chastain. It's hard for me to not root for him in this race, but personally, I'm kind of rooting for Brett Moffitt to go back to back. I know Brett Moffitt won the championship last year, and so repeat champion. I know NASCAR fans hate it when anyone backs things up with the wins. They hate dominance, apparently, but I wouldn't mind seeing Brett Moffitt win a second championship in a row. Remember last year, he won that championship for Hattori Racing in the 16, and immediately after winning that championship, he got booted from the ride. They kicked him out of the 16 because he wasn't bringing in enough funding. The champion got kicked out of his ride. But he landed on his feet over at GMS in the 24 truck and has been just as good this year. He's got 4 wins this year, which is most of all these championship 4 contenders. And I think it would just be crazy for Brett Moffitt to win 2 straight championships for 2 completely different teams, 2 completely different manufacturers. I'm kind of rooting for Brett Moffitt just because I think that would be really, really cool. If you look at these 4 drivers, you want my pick. You got Ross Chastain, who's won 3 Truck Series races this year, 4, but he got disqualified out of 1. But he's won 3 truck races that counted. One of them, he did win 1 mile-and-a-half race earlier this year. And I'm kind of comparing mile-and-a-half stats because Homestead's a mile-and-a-half. So typically if you run well at mile-and-a-halfs early in the season, you're probably going to run well at mile-and-a-halfs late in the season. So Chastain's got 3 wins. Matt Crafton has 0 wins. He's kind of just been consistently pointing his way through these rounds. Thor Sports had some other issues, but he's remained mostly unscathed, so that's why he's here. I don't really think Crafton's going to be a favorite to win this race unless something happens to the leaders. Stuart Friesen has 2 wins this year, 1 at Phoenix last week, so he's riding a hot wave of momentum, but he doesn't have any wins at mile-and-a-halfs this year. He ran really well at Texas earlier in the season. That was a mile-and-a-half race. He almost won that one, so Stuart Friesen could be an outside contender better, I'd say. But yeah, in my opinion, this is going to come down to Brett Moffitt versus Ross Chastain. Brett Moffitt's in better equipment. He has 4 wins this year. He did win at Chicagoland, a mile and a half earlier in the season, versus Chastain, who's got the 3 wins. Not in quite as good of equipment, but he's got more miles on him. Chastain's raced so many Xfinity Cup and truck races to this point. He's got a lot of experience over there. I'm going to pick Brett Moffitt to win the Truck Series Championship this year. I think he goes back-to-back, simply because I think of the 4 Truck Series drivers, he is in the best equipment. In those 4 Championship 4 guys, he is in the best car, he's in the best truck. I think that's going to prevail ultimately. If we're at a short track, Ross Chastain's aggressiveness could potentially go a long way, I think. But given that we're at a mile and a half, the bumpers, they're not going to be beating and banging too much at this racetrack. I think that goes against Chastain, and I think the fact that he is in slightly inferior equipment is going to make things tougher on him. I definitely think he'll be running up front. I think we'll see Chastain in the top 5 all night long, but I'm going to give the edge to Brett Moffitt. Those are my Truck Series predictions. Brett Moffitt will go back-to-back, win 2 straight championships with 2 completely different race teams. That'd be a cool story. That'll be a really cool thing if that happens. All right, let's fast forward to the Xfinity Series. I want to spend most of this episode talking about the Cup Series side of things, but let's talk about the Xfinity Series as well. The Xfinity Series has had their version of a big 3 this year, and it has been a whopping 3. Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Cole Custer have dominated this season. They've won like 15 races, or no, 20 races, something like that between the 3 of them. Justin Allgaier joins the championship for this year. He's only got 1 win this year, but it was this past weekend at Phoenix, so he's got some momentum riding his way. So I want to compare these guys' numbers a little bit on mile and a half this year. Christopher Bell leads the series with 8 wins this season, 2 of them on mile and a half, so that's important because Homestead is a mile and a half track. However, Christopher Bell's numbers at Miami his last 2 seasons driving that 20 car have not been very good. He did win the Truck Series Championship a few years back when he was driving for Kyle Busch Motorsports. He had a good run at Homestead Miami then, obviously, but in the Xfinity Series, things haven't gone too well for Christopher Bell, so keep that in mind. He might seem like the obvious favorite, but keep that in mind. Cole Custer has had a huge year, 7 wins, 2 of them also on mile and a half, similar to Christopher Bell, so they've just kind of shared the dominance at those types of racetracks this year. But Cole Custer has one thing that these other drivers really don't have, and that is a dominant statistical career at Homestead Miami Speedway. He has finished 1st and 2nd in the last 2 races, the last 2 years at this racetrack, and in those last 2 years, those last 2 races, he has won pretty much every stage. Yeah, in fact, in both 2018 and 2017, he swept Stage 1 and Stage 2 in both of those races, and obviously won the race in 2017. So Cole Custer historically has been extremely tough to beat at Homestead Miami Speedway. In my opinion, that might make him the clear favorite for this race. But don't sleep on Tyler Reddick. We did that last year, and that got us into trouble. But Tyler Reddick obviously won the 2018 Xfinity Series Championship by winning at Homestead Miami Speedway in this final race. So he has some great recent history at this racetrack. He has 5 wins this year, including 1 at a mile and a half. So Tyler Reddick, another guy you definitely can't make the mistake of sleeping on. Actually, he has 2 wins on mile and a half this year, actually, just like Bell and Custer. He's won Charlotte, and I think he won Las Vegas as well. So actually, he's right there with those guys on as far as wins at mile and a half are concerned. All right, so Justin Allgaier has only 1 win this season, so he's been pretty distanced from the big 3. But if you want to talk about consistency and say like consistency is key, Justin Allgaier is a freaking poster child for it. I've watched most of the Xfinity races this year, but I didn't really realize this stat until I was looking at his numbers for this season. He has not finished worse than 9th in a race since early July, Daytona. That's 16 straight races where he has not finished worse than 9th place. He's not winning very much. He's not winning hardly at all, but he is not making mistakes. He is 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th every single week. And we've seen in years past on the Cup Series side, on the Trucks, Xfinity side, we've seen in years past when you get to Homestead Miami, if you just run well, stay out of trouble, stay in that top 5, something can happen in front of you and you can easily emerge as the championship favorite. I don't expect Justin Allgaier to go out and lead laps and dominate this race by any stretch of the imagination, but he will be right there. He is not going to be far behind these other guys, and if something happens up front, which can very well happen in high pressure races like this, Justin Allgaier will be within striking distance. So keep an eye on him. Don't count him out. Junior Motorsports always seems to rise to the occasion. That 9-car one hasn't won several championships. Junior Motorsports always seems to sneak up on you when it comes to these championship races. My championship pick for the Xfinity Series, I'm going with Cole Custer. I think he breaks through this year. I talked earlier this week about how I think a championship this year could go a long way in helping Custer land a Cup Series ride as early as next year. I think Cole Custer gets it done this year. Hasn't necessarily been the most dominant driver all season long. I think he shared that with Bell and Reddick, obviously. But Miami, he has been very good at Homestead Miami Speedway in his career, and I just think that's going to be tough to beat. I think you give a determined Cole Custer, this is the best Cole Custer's ever looked in his career, you put him now at his best racetrack, I just think something magical is going to happen. I think this is the year for Cole Custer. He will be your Xfinity Series champion. That's my pick, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Alrighty, so I've talked about Trucks Friday night, Xfinity's going to be Saturday. Now let's talk about the Cup race on Sunday, the Championship 4. This is what we're going to focus on here, because we got 4 heavyweights on the Cup Series side of things. a lot of people criticize this current playoff format, but once again this year, as far as the three main series are concerned, I think they got the championship four pretty darn accurate. It's hard to not look at the lineups for the trucks, the Xfinity, and the Cup Series side of things and say that those weren't the 12 best drivers across those series this whole year. Focusing on the Cup Series side, you had three Joe Gibbs cars, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch. They've combined to win like half the Cup Series races this year. And then we have Kevin Harvick, Stewart-Haas Racing driver. He's been the leader of that team for years now. He had another solid season, had a great clutch win at Texas Motor Speedway, so he's joining them in the championship four. And I think it's safe to say those have probably been the four best Cup Series teams all year long. I think you could throw Logano or Keselowski in that mix, or maybe Chase Elliott, but they got eliminated last round. They were close. It was a toss-up between them and Harvick for kind of those last spots. And I talked about this in my post-race review after Phoenix, but this championship four, of course, looks very familiar to previous championship fours. In fact, this is the exact same championship four as last year, except swap out Denny Hamlin in place of Joey Logano. That's really the only difference. Kyle Busch consistently is in this championship four almost every year. With Martin Truex Jr., same thing. Kevin Harvick, same thing. Hamlin's the new guy this year. Last year, Joey Logano was the new guy, kind of, and he won the race, won the championship. This year, Denny Hamlin's maybe in that seat to play upset. Now, when I look at these four, I'm going to look at their wins, but I also want to look at how they ran at mile-and-a-halfs. Martin Truex Jr. consistently this year has probably had the best numbers at the mile-and-a-half racetracks, but when it comes to wins, Martin Truex Jr. had 8 wins this season, but only 2 of them were at mile-and-a-halfs, which is still pretty good. Denny Hamlin has 6 wins this year, but just like Truex, he also has 2 wins at mile-and-a-halfs. He won pretty recently, actually, at Kansas. Kyle Busch has 4 wins this year, but he hasn't won a race since early June. I feel like that's something that nobody's really talking about lately. He's got kind of a winless streak going, and also, to Kyle Busch's discredit, unfortunately, he has 0 wins at mile-and-a-halfs this year, so that puts him significantly behind Truex and Hamlin, in my opinion, if we're kind of establishing a pecking order here. And then there's Kevin Harvick. Now, Harvick also only has 4 wins this year, 1 at a mile-and-a-half. He won the most recent mile-and-a-half race at Texas. Texas is pretty different from Homestead, Miami, but they do share that similarity, that key similarity, that they are both mile-and-a-halfs, high horsepower. They're run with the same aero package that we'll see at Miami, so that is significant that Harvick won the most recent mile-and-a-half race. Now, Harvick's only got 4 wins this year, but unlike Kyle Busch, who won all his races at the beginning of the season, Harvick's won all of his races pretty much in the second half of this year. He's come on strong when it matters most. So if we look at these championship four, right now, if we just look at wins at both across this whole season and specifically at mile-and-a-halfs this year, the edge definitely goes to Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. They both have 2 mile-and-a-half wins this year, whereas Kyle Busch and Harvick have less than that, and they also have most overall wins. Hamlin and Truex have clearly been the two, I would say, the 2 most dominant drivers this year. Kyle Busch started the year out of the gate super duper strong, but he has teetered off significantly since then. I think right now peaking at the right time, Truex, Hamlin, and Harvick's probably the 3rd highest ranked driver when I look at these stats. Let's look at their Homestead Miami stats though, because that might also play a role in these things. I know we're running a very different aero package this year at Homestead Miami than we've ever run before. Track is going to race differently, it's going to drive differently, very differently than it ever has before. So I know these looking at old Homestead stats maybe isn't the most relevant, but I still want to do it because the track is still the same. It's still, if you're familiar with where the bumps are, which groove kind of widens out, there's still things that I think could play to your favor if you were good at Miami with the old aero packages. So let's look at these 4 driver stats because those are also kind of interesting. Martin Truex Jr. has 1 win at Homestead Miami in his career. It was when he won the championship in 2017. His average finish is 10.79. That's pretty good, especially given that early in his career, Truex was not in championship level equipment. He's only really been in championship contending equipment the last 4 or 5 years, so that's pretty significant right there. He's also finished 1st and 2nd at Miami the last 2 seasons, so he has been hot at this racetrack in recent years. Denny Hamlin is actually the only driver of these 4 to have won at Miami more than once. He has 2 career wins at Homestead Miami. He also has a slightly better average finish than Truex at 10.5. Truex has been really hot the last 2 years with 1st and 2nd place finishes, keeps finishing on the podium, but Denny Hamlin's riding a pretty good streak of 6 straight top 12 finishes at Miami. He hasn't dominated many races at this racetrack, but he's usually in contention, and this year, with as good as those race cars have been, Hamlin, this could be his year. That's why I picked him at the beginning of these playoffs. Kyle Busch has 1 career win at Miami. It was his championship in 2015. His average finish, however, is 17.6 at this racetrack. That's skewed mainly due to very early in his career when he was with Hendrick. He had a couple DNFs right out the gate at this racetrack. That's kind of killed his average finish a little bit. If I look in recent history, he's been much better at this track. Last 4 years, he's got 4 straight top 6 finishes at Homestead Miami, so he's figured it out since he joined Gibbs. Now that he's later in his career, but his average finish is definitely skewed from his earlier misfortune at this racetrack. Now this is where it gets interesting because Kevin Harvick, his stats at Homestead are pretty freaking unreal. He only has 1 win at Homestead. That was his championship in 2014, but his average finish, keep in mind, Harvick's been racing in the Cup Series since 2001. His average finish at Miami is 6.56. He's riding a streak of 11 straight top 10 finishes, that's pretty hard to do, as well as 5 straight top 5 finishes. Since he's gotten to Stewart-Haas Racing, he has not finished outside the top 5 at Homestead Miami Speedway. That's ridiculous. So I feel like we keep talking about Joe Gibbs Racing, those 3 cars, as probably the best equipment in this championship for, but Kevin Harvick's got the Homestead experience. He's so good at this racetrack, that might vault him back up into consideration. What's crazy to me is when we've looked at all these stats, when we look at recent history, how these guys have been running the last few weeks, it's clear to me that the only thing that's clear to me is that Kyle Busch is probably 4th in the pecking order here. The guy who most of this season I think we talked about as a surefire top championship contender. The championship was going to go through Kyle Busch if you talk to anyone in May. But here we are just a few months later and the statistics tell another story. The numbers speak for themselves. You cannot honestly sit here and tell me that Kyle Busch is the favorite going into this weekend. He is, in my opinion, quite obviously in 4th place out of these 4 drivers. Obviously, it's a one-race championship. Anything can happen. He could easily go out and win. But if I was a betting man, Kyle Busch would be my 4th pick right now if I had to rank these 4. And that's just crazy to me. But you guys aren't here to hear who I think won't win. Now, that's boring. I'm going to give you guys my championship prediction. I'm sticking with Denny Hamlin. I picked him at the beginning of these playoffs, right before Las Vegas, right before the round of 16. I told you guys this was Denny Hamlin's year, that I've seen a new Denny Hamlin. We've seen glimpses of the past Denny Hamlin. He had his run-ins, his issues at Texas, little controversies at Martinsville. We've seen little glimpses of the old problem Denny Hamlin, but overall, his clutch win at Phoenix last weekend sold me on it. Denny Hamlin is my championship pick. You look at the numbers. He's been great at Miami in his career. He's been great at mile and a half this year. I think this is his best chance he's had, obviously since 2010, which we keep talking about. We're going to stop harping on that one. But this is a heavyweight battle. I think if any one of these drivers wins the championship this year, it's going to be hard for anyone to argue that they didn't earn it. You know, Joe Gibbs Racing's had the best cars, the best equipment this year. Obviously, Truex has got the most wins, but Kyle Busch started this year out on a historic streak. He had, what, like 12, 13 straight top 10s to start the year? That's unheard of. Denny Hamlin's had 6 wins this year. He had the huge win at Phoenix to make it into this race. If any one of these drivers wins, it's going to be hard for you to tell me that they didn't earn it. Like last year, that was the controversy because you had the big 3 plus Logano, and Logano ended up winning the championship despite not being the flashy big 3 all year. So that was a controversy, even though if we look at the stats last year, Joey Logano had the best average finish of anyone in the final 10 races. I think that was enough to deserve a championship. People want consistency to be rewarded in NASCAR. Logano was very consistent last year, and this year, I think that title kind of goes to Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch. But once again, all 4 of these championship drivers are well into their 30s. The youth movement's going to kind of have to wait another year, it seems, to really break into championship contending level. But anyway, that's my show. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know who your championship pick is down below for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Truck Series. Who do you guys got? I'm going with Denny Hamlin on the Cup Series side of things, Brett Moffitt on the trucks, Cole Custer in the Xfinity Series, but let me know what you guys think down below. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters, Michael Harrison, at You Is The Stars, Cameron, James John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFaceRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Lucius, Jeremy Conklin, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMicino, Sky Racing Forum, Bryce Schumacher, Bryce Starcher, Scott McNew, Colton Austin, Bradley Pelletier, Emmanuel Castillo, and the rest of these incredible Patreon supporters. Thank you all for your continued support throughout these entire playoffs, throughout this season. Really means a lot to me, so thank you. I'll have more episodes up next week, obviously recapping the Homestead finales, talking about the championship, talking about any news that comes out of that, and then the offseason hits. And this show is not going to stop at all in the offseason. I have a lot of big videos planned, a lot of recap videos, a lot of videos that maybe aren't looking like your typical Out of the Groove episode, but there'll still be news in the offseason. There's still going to be tons of stuff to react to talk about, so stay tuned because we still have a lot of exciting things coming. We're also about to hit 100,000 subscribers, so thank you guys a ton for hopefully helping me reach that milestone. Hopefully we can get there before Christmas. That would be the best present I could get. But anyway, yeah, I really can't thank you guys enough for your support this entire season. It's almost over. That's insane. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. I'll see you all again very soon. I gotta get to Homestead, Miami. Is my car done being fixed yet? Is it fixed yet? Oh, hey, it's fixed. Wow. Toco Warranty really does have everything covered.